All right, welcome to our first Chalk Talk this semester with the newly appointed athletic director. There we go, got you. Kelley Kish at Wingate University. My best friend is a Wingate alum, which is why I know it's Wingate, not Wingate. And so Kelley, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to you, let you share your path as much or as little as you want. We've known each other a while, being director of ops together, not going to tell you when, but a while ago. So thank you for doing this for us. We can't wait to learn from you.
That's great. Thanks, Jana. It's funny that you said how you said the school name. So I am actually really intentional to always say Wingate. And you should have seen me on my interview because they're calling it, they're saying Wingate and Wingate. And at the time I was interim AD at Winthrop. So I was trying really hard to make sure I was saying the right school name, and they're saying the two different ones the different ways. And so I have learned that with the way that we put it, as far as people who work at the institution, I get alums and whatnot, but it's the town of Wingate, but the college, University of Wingate. So I try to be intentional because for our branding, that is the big deal. Like when we're in all the NCAA championships and things, like I want to be certain that they're saying Wingate, because if people do say it how the locals say it, Wingate, you're like, hey, how do you spell that anyway? So
Wingate makes a lot more sense to me.
Yes, and win being more prominent, I love that too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And again, like Jana said, we actually overlap. So I started my career actually at my alma mater, which is the University of Florida. And I actually grew up in Gainesville, Florida. So I grew up like surrounded by higher education and surrounded by a place where you look up to and you have these student athletes and this dynamic and amazing athletic program. And so again, I ended up going to school there, immersed in higher education throughout my childhood, opportunities that presents for hearing speakers, going to camps, whatever else, came about, let alone sporting events. And then I worked at the University of Florida for about 9 years as the director of volleyball operations. And if you don't know Florida volleyball, a lot of people compare it to Tennessee women's basketball in the fact that every year I was there, we won the SEC. We went to 2 Final Fours. We played for 1 national championship, a future Hall of Famer coach there that I was fortunate enough to start my career with. And honestly, it kind of helped me set the bar for coaches and that interaction that they have with student athletes and the impact on their life. So while I was the director of operations, I knew that wasn't going to be my career ceiling. Some people it is, and that's everyone, goes different paths. I knew I wanted to move more into overall administration for overall athletic departments. And I actually started to grow a passion for Division II through knowing coaches that were working our camps. There's a tremendous, the Sunshine State Conference is a Division II conference that's all over Florida. And so just getting to know theirs, we would play spring games at some of those conferences. And so having a feel for Division II, had tremendous mentors, and was able to, my first step from University of Florida was as an assistant AD at University of Indianapolis, which is a Division II, who happened to finish number 3 in the Learfield Directors Cup this past year. So a very, very, very successful Division II program historically and currently. From there, I was able to move back to Florida. It was a little cold for this Florida native in Indianapolis. And then I went to Nova Southeastern University as the number 2 there as well. I was there about 5.5 years. That's in Fort Lauderdale. So I was back in my home state, close to family, and knew at that point I was really continuing to prepare to be a Division II athletic director. I think it's important for you all to know that, while I was at Nova Southeastern, I interviewed and was a finalist at like 4 different Division II AD opportunities, and none of those were my fit. I thought they were when I was in the process. I thought I could see myself there, but my path has been what it needed to be, which was none of those opportunities. But while I was at Nova Southeastern as the number 2, I got my first AD opportunity, which was also at a Division II institution called Lake Erie College, which is just outside Cleveland. That was my first opportunity to be an AD, and it was a tremendous learning opportunity, which you'll hear me talk about a little bit, how I lean a lot on those lessons learned. that I'm not a first-time AD sitting in this chair now. And again, a path that I never would have thought a Floridian would end up in Cleveland, and so much snow. But I was there for a couple of years, and just knew I had to get back to the South. That was the move then to Winthrop. Thought I was coming in as the number 2, ended up becoming the interim AD prior to my departure. And then when Wingate opened up, went through the process here, knowing this was my destination, my mountaintop, the Division II chair I wanted to be in, the opportunity to build upon what had been already, happening here. So Wingate, we have won 14 straight conference cups, meaning we have the strongest program in the South Atlantic Conference for 14 straight years. We finished 13th in this most recent Learfield Directors Cup. We were the baseball national champions now 2 years ago. We also have a men's soccer national championship in our background. So knew that this was kind of a pinnacle where it was the right fit for me as I went through the interview process. And that's how we end up here today. I started here in January, and that you'll see that kind of sets the tone for some of my answers to of those predetermined questions that we talked about too, Jana.
That's awesome. So you have had a very, you've had a nice career, a very long extended career, different spots, different parts of the country. Could you talk a little bit, this is a leadership degree and a leadership course. So could you talk a little bit about your style and maybe how you've seen that evolve as you've progressed?
And I think that's key, whether it's evolution of it or just the fact that you have to vary it. And in each role, I've had some consistency for sure with me as a leader, that I'm participative. I pride myself on servant leadership, and just visionary leadership, I would say, is another way to look at it. I also, I like the term for myself of I'm a realistic optimist. And I think, when you think of Division II, and some of the mentors I've had and some of the positions that I've been in, when I use the term participative, it's because even last night I picked up, after the volleyball game, I picked up one of the game balls from the line judge because I was there watching. The line judge was looking for to get it. I brought it to our coach. He's like, "Whoa, this is a new one." Our AD bringing us the game ball, and I'm like, "Hey, yes, I'm participative. I'm going to do what we need." And I think that actually comes from that director of operations background, and that we wore so many hats, and anything that was needed, we were ready to jump in, learn, absorb, and help, and give, valued input. And so just kind of carrying that throughout my career. And obviously Division II, that's what we want to do. We wear a lot of hats toward our student athlete experience, but the leadership style really depends on the role. So to give you a little context for Wingate, the AD that that retired had been at this institution 50 years, in this seat for 20 years. So what I'm really doing in my leadership is making sure that I'm present and that I'm supportive of our coaches, because as you can imagine, anyone leaving a place after 50 years, how they transition out is, slowly, less availability, and some things that were impacting their time. So it's really important. And what I'm getting from our coaches and our administrators is, they're just craving time and attention. So me being present, me being supportive, and sharing what our direction and what we're doing has been important. At Winthrop, it was stability because I was the third interim AD. And so there was need for stability. There was need for knowing what we were doing with our campus leadership, understanding the budget and the state system, some things there around stability. At Lake Erie, I stepped into a program that we had very, very little national and regional and conference success. And knew that we were turning a corner. We had changed conferences and some things were going to align. So a lot of things that I was doing were operational. We hosted our first NCAA men's soccer tournament. We hosted conference championships because we were in those positions for the first time. So a lot of what I was doing there was operational because our staff hadn't been through a lot of those things, but I had in previous stops, as I mentioned, as the number 2. And then to the number 2, the leadership style there really has to play off of what do you need to fill in based off of your leader, the AD in this case, while I was the number 2. Where did I need to be strong in, and where did I need to make sure that the AD was taking the leadership role? And even if behind the scenes I was helping with their style, my style was maybe not with the spotlight on it, but was able to be felt overall by things we accomplished and got done. So I think that's yes, it's going to transform because you're going to grow as a leader. but also just that you also have to assess the situation and decide what to play as your strengths the most in your leadership.
I think that last point's a really great point for the class to hear, especially as they're going to transition from grad school. A lot of them are already working full time, but you get into that first position, you have a strong sense of who you are as a leader, but then how do you pair that with the organization and the person you're reporting to, right? Not everything might not be that
Yes.
perfect fit, but there's going to be some fit, and you have to figure out what that is.
Yeah, and you can't just plug and play from how you worked with your last leader, because it needs to be, well, it needs to vary for your institution and the role, all those things for sure. But then you just think about the leader and what they need from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So being you're what, 9 months in now, and you think you kind of touched upon some of the stuff that you've emphasized, but I think our students are really interested, like, how do you go in and establish trust with employees? How do you then instill a sense of positivity in the workplace? And maybe positivity isn't the word that you would use, but how do you go about doing those things as the new leader at the institution?
It's great a question, and it's also just interesting because as the same time as I was starting in January, we were also coming out of some of the COVID protocols being lessened too. So we were able to have like face-to-face staff meetings with obviously with a virtual option too, and distancing, and people were still able to take their safety into the first consideration. But I wanted to be sure everyone knew that I already saw them as leaders, and I wanted to build their leadership, their ability to lead, whether it's their individual sport program or their administrative unit. And you build trust as you're working through things, whether it was a COVID situation, obviously those were still happening all spring, or just the fact that we were working through how do we, manage hosting a baseball regional for the first time ever. And so being present, being available, like I mentioned, but then also, being as transparent as you can be with information. And honestly, with starting new in January, a lot of that transparency was like, you know what, I don't know that answer. Let me work to find it out. Or why don't you tell me what we've done historically, so that then I could decide, hey, are we going to stay on that same route, or is this something that I'd like to see us change and tweak based off of what we were doing? And remember, as we were coming out of the COVID restrictions, the years that were impacted, championships, hosting, home events, there was a lot to set into place because we hadn't done some things for 2 and 3 years, given when the season was too. So I liked that I could come in and immediately put my stamp on things, and our coaches and administrators were kind of craving leadership, direction, policies to a point. And so to be able to build that trust and followership was like, yes, I'm going to be here. I'm going to listen to your input. I'm going to see what we've done and then decide what are we doing, or I'm going to empower someone to make that decision. And hey, how are we going to handle ticketing, at the softball tournament or whatever it might be, and let people take some ownership too. So it really was building them up as leaders, listening and learning, and them knowing that they were valued as we made decisions.
Guys, I'm going to ask one more question, and then it's going to be the ball's going to be in your court. Okay, so this is your warning, just a heads up. So you mentioned early on, like, finally, when I said, "Are you settled?" You said, "Finally got everybody hired." So, as a group of folks that could potentially be looking to be hired places, what do you look for? What do you kind of pass down to search committees, to coaches as they're putting staffs together? Like, what are you looking for in the hiring process?
Yes, and this is a great question, and helps you all, with some actual things that are going to impact you. So I love being able to talk about this for you and with you. But I'm always looking for someone that clearly has done their research. I get you might have your you might be in a lot of pools and just kind of casting a wide net, but I want to see that things about Wingate, our historical success. I mean, some even impressed me by knowing like places I've been and whatnot too. Like, that's not as important. I need to know that you understand Wingate and who we are. And I like to even ask questions about Division II and understanding, even if you've never worked in Division II, understanding, that we, some of the important facts, we are high level athletic scholarships, and let alone Wingate is successful. But what does that mean for the student athlete experience, whatever part of that you're impacting? Tell me what that means to you. And I want to hear that, because that's what ultimately matters when I'm looking at fit. Now, yes, I'm going to have the hiring manager drill down on some specifics of experience about, hey, what have you done? How would you handle these specific situations? But myself, like philosophically, I want to hear how you feel about what are some of our core values as an institution and as our department of athletics also. I also like to, particularly for jobs that would be maybe what some of you all would be looking at right after graduate school, but when it's someone that's maybe it's not their job they're going to retire from when I'm talking to them, I want to know that they have that growth mindset, that growth thought process of come in, work as hard as you can in this position, learn as much as you can, stretch yourself. And then if you outgrow this position, hopefully I'll have something else where I can land you. But if I can't, then you go on to your next great step. And I understand that. And I want to empower you and prepare you for that. And so I want to see that someone is driven in that way to be as good as they can be for us in the years that they're here. And then whenever the step is right for them at the next place, or an elevation here, that they're going to have left us in a better place because they've come in and worked hard, not that they've not just accepted status quo and done the minimal to do the job responsibilities. So and then I'm also real intentional that our staff is representing our student athlete population. When you look at, some of the specific of demographics, gender, race, socioeconomic background, former student athletes, making sure that some of those things are met with intentionality with hiring. And obviously there's some nuances when you're hiring a coach versus an administrator. But as the leader of the department, ultimately, I want to be sure that big picture, I can see that you're ready, prepared, and aligned with what we want the student athlete experience to be, and what's important to us there.
It's a great answer. It's a bunch of really, really, really good information. Maurice, you raised your hand. Guys, feel free to introduce yourself briefly if you'd like to before asking your question.
Good afternoon. First of all, may I call you Kelley?
Yes, please do.
Yes, ma'am. Well, first of all, thank you for taking time. I know you're very busy and have a lot going on. So it's important to speak with you. And I have a couple questions. I hope it's okay. I don't want to skip line or anything. My first question is, you have an extensive background in DE&I. You have that DE&I certificate from the University of South Florida. And I think that's very important. It speaks a lot to who you are as an individual. And you briefly spoke on it. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of hiring diverse individuals and what does that look like for college athletic landscape now and how we're constantly changing over time?
Absolutely. And I appreciate that you asked this question, Maurice, because it's a core value to me as a person. And it was important to me that it was a value of our institution. And it was a point during my hiring process for sure that I was vocal and advocating for who we need to be in that space, and yes, who they may have been before I got here too, not speaking anything about that, but who we were going to be and who we needed to be under my leadership. And I think having those conversations on the front end in my position, but then also being intentional as I'm talking to candidates, that they understand that is a core value for us. And I actually have a standard question I ask everyone related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, to your point about how do we make sure that that's impacting our hiring decisions and our hiring pools, it just takes intentionality and real work in that space, whether it's networks that you have or networks that someone you're connected to has, to make sure that we're considering a diverse candidate pool. I've done things as specific everywhere I've been as updating job descriptions to be sure that it's mentioning how important diversity, equity, inclusion is to us. And even including a diversity statement that I can evaluate from the beginning from people, and that they know, like, we're going to talk about this. It is a value, and it's not something that we're just happy with where we are. We're always looking to lead and be better in this space. And then I do want to brag on one thing that Division II does in this space is Division II has specific internships. So it's a fully funded by the NCAA ethnic minorities and women's internship grant. So we were fortunate enough to receive one. it's, it's $30,000 over 10 months, but like we included housing and a meal plan, and they get $3,000 for professional development. And the whole point is that it's going to be an ethnic minority and or woman, and it is preparing underrepresented groups to, now you have this internship and then you're ready to go be your first, full-time opportunity, or, whatever that next step may be. And so Division II really, and Division III has some of these grants, I'm just not as familiar with them, but Division II is really intentional with preparing that underrepresented group. And it's something that I love. And as soon as I got this job and started in January, the deadline was the end of January, I applied for that, for us to have that fully funded by the NCAA position and in an area that we needed. Now I have to share with you all, we had an unfruitful search. Someone rescinded their acceptance of the position, and then I just didn't want to hire anyone. So we actually deferred it till next year. So you all, that will be an opening that we'll be looking for them to start in, July or August for 10 months. And so, you have to look for those opportunities to make sure we're helping prepare people also. And again, it takes intentionality. That in my position, I started from my interview process talking about it, and everyone knows that that is a priority for us.
And I had one other question, if I may, Dr. Butler. Thank you for that information, and just a little background about me. I'm in a PhD program here at Clemson, and my research surrounds DE&I and college athletics. Okay. So that's why I asked the question. And my other question to you is, you spoke to this earlier when you in a couple of questions, I think, and it's very important to me. I know David Sherwood really well. I used to be an SID, and when I think about, yes, ma'am. He's a good friend of mine. When you talk about,
he's got so much institutional knowledge. I love having him on my staff. Yes.
Yes. And that's part of my question. When you're starting a new role as a director of athletics at a university, talk about when you have someone who's been a staple at the institution. I think David's been at Wingate for over 35 years. And how do you kind of like use his knowledge to help you kind of like understand the Department of Athletics and, even the university as a whole and the culture for the area? Can you talk about the importance of having those people around who are like a staple at the institution?
Well, yes. I mean, David's one example. We also have another assistant AD, Bill Nash, who has been here in a lot of different roles too. And I just lean on them. I mean, and let them know, like, yes, introduce me to alums, tell me things I don't know. And just share whatever it might be that you think is relevant. And that those two are some of the greatest that, hey, you might want to know this. This is someone you do need to know. They're coming to this football game. They're coming to this weekend's tournament, whatever it might be. And so, yes, having tremendous people like that, especially considering I'm filling the shoes of someone who was here 50 years themselves, so they knew everyone also. But it's nice to play the, hey, I'm new, let me meet everyone that I can also, while also leaning on them for that input and knowledge, to your point of how great David is. And so, yes, but then at the same time, I know that you're familiar with those two administrative names, but we have coaches who have been here over 20 years also. This is a place that coaches come, they keep winning, and they retire from. And so I get to lean on so many people with institutional and historical knowledge specific to athletics that aren't just administrators, but coaches too. And so it's fun. And the biggest thing for me is to make sure that they understand, like, change is going to come. And sometimes it's that uncomfortable space where the best growth is going to happen. And they've all bought into that. And I'm thankful.
Thank you very much.
Kelley, I'm going to ask a question right now because it kind of falls in line with something you discussed, and then I'll pitch it over to Davis. You have always been someone who's pursued growth and knowledge. And so, for example, finding out about that scholarship at the Division II level, you're involved with women leaders in college sports. Could you speak to maybe some of the associations that are out there and accessible to folks already in college athletics, and kind of how you go about finding out all that information?
Yes, there's so many professional organizations. So I can speak to some that, I've served or even encouraged our groups to, our staff to be part of. But you mentioned women leaders in college sports. I'm actually on the board of directors for that currently, but throughout my career, I've been on the Title IX committee, the local organizing committee for Tampa, and the nominating committee, and so it's just like you find ways to serve before you're ready for like the board of directors in an organization like that. And then, so I'm not sure if y'all are familiar, but there's a group that it's NACDA. Now that is the acronym for National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics. So NACDA, NACDA. Now they are the big umbrella. Underneath that umbrella, there are all kinds of, I'm going to say there's probably at least 12 areas that specialize in facility management, fundraising, that specialize in compliance, ticketing, 2-year associations. There's the D2 Athletic Directors Association under that. I mean, you have an area that you're passionate about, you want to learn more about, they have a group that specializes in that. They have the minorities opportunities, the MOAA, Minority Opportunities Athletic Association. And that one you can do in any specialty. And they have a lot of student memberships. I want to say student memberships are like $25 or $50. And then you have access to all the different things, let alone if it's virtual, but then also just, emails, the Bethesda magazines, whatever else it might be. And then there's the opportunity then to sign up for some of the mentorship programs. Same with women leaders, the mentorships, the online ones. So that's an organization that I've served on as I've come up in some different areas and made sure, whether it was the Business Management the Business Managers Association, the Compliance Association, and made some connections to people that you still lean on and rely on today. And then I think, there's always something just to keep an eye just on higher ed as a whole, and just some of those, not necessarily organizations, but can you follow them? Can you see what articles that they're putting out, things that you can know? I mean, I went to a CASE conference, which is the Council of Advancement. And so that's like institution-wide for advancement and fundraising. And because I didn't want to just learn about that in the athletics world, I needed to best understood how do I serve my institution in this space. And so, there's also, don't just limit yourself to those sports and intercollegiate athletics, also just look at higher ed as a whole.
Go ahead,
Hey,
Dave.
Kelley, am I good, Jana? Thank you. Hey, Kelley, how are you doing? Davis King.
Hello.
Can you just kind of talk about the biggest challenge or obstacle maybe that you had to overcome to get where you are today?
Well, let's see. If you look big picture at my career, I think the biggest challenge was when, in my mind at the time, I thought those AD positions that I didn't land were the fit and were my path, but clearly they weren't, because I only end up here in my dream job and where I'm going to retire from. That I only end up here because of the path that I did have. So even when things felt right and that was where I was supposed to be next, kind of accepting that, what did I learn in the process? What did I learn about myself? And then on to what really was going to be my path. So I think that is definitely a big picture challenge. I think there's challenges within our industry and within higher education right now. When you just look at the enrollment cliff, you look at just that, you want to be a partner in the enrollment and the different pieces that we need to sustain institutions and student athlete experience and retention, and those things are important. I think overall some challenges that we have is just, hey, this future of the NCAA and, the people who are not at, power 2.5s, power 3s, power 5s, whatever you want to call it right now, conferences, what are they going to do now? The beauty is Division II, when the Constitution passed January for the NCAA, we maintained our percentage of the overall revenue flow for the NCAA, that Division II and Division III still get our percentages. So we really need Division II we really need NCAA to keep those revenue flows coming in, which, as we know, is primarily the television contract around men's and women's March Madness, primarily. And so that's the things that leave me unsettled, is when you hear different commissioners or ADs, primarily at Division I, talking about, well, maybe there's something where we're breaking off, from the NCAA. And that I'm thinking, okay, just don't take the basketball championships. Like, we need those to stay and not, I've heard some talks about maybe there's less AQs. Okay, is that as attractive then to Division I schools to be in a March Madness that can include men's and women's AQs from every conference? So those are the kind of things that, although we have our percentage slated in that constitution, if the NCAA overall revenues go down, Division II championships, that grant I spoke about, some of the other professional developments, let alone the staffing, when you look at the governance staff legislation, all those things can be impacted. So, I think that's a challenge to consider now. And then, mental health for sure is something that we always need to be leading with at the forefront in decisions of supporting our staff, but, our student to be prepared to support our student athletes. And then there's the great resignation going on in athletic training primarily. And then, NIL, I see it more as an opportunity. So that was a lot of challenges because there's so much great stuff going on, but these things are ever changing, and it's fun to be, around the table and leading the way in all these spaces to know what's going on.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kelley, you definitely hit on all the hot topics that we are going to be unpacking this semester.
Good.
Yeah, so we got four hands. Let's see if everybody can remember this. We're gonna go Sierra, then Duncan, then Kylie, and then who just raised? We'll just go those three, and then I'll back for another round. Sierra, Duncan, Kylie.
Hi, Kelly. My name is Sierra. So my first question is, I have a couple. So what is your philosophy that you strive for with your athletes that you want to give to them?
So I hope this will answer the question, but I meet with every single team at the beginning of the year, just completed those, in the last couple of weeks as they reported to campus for training camp or, when school started. And so I tell them I want them to be champions in three places. We want to be champions in the classroom. So what does championship effort look like in the classroom? Obviously sitting in the front of the class, engaging with professors, taking advantage of internship, volunteer research opportunities. And I tout to them that we have a 3.2 GPA across all 23 sports. Every single student athlete involved, counted 700 plus student athletes, a 3.2 GPA. So talk to them about how to be a champion in the classroom. Then I talked to him about being a champion in the community. And that means finding something that you're passionate about. Maybe it's a campus organization or club or fraternity or sorority service organization. Maybe it's something in our community, mentoring children going into elementary schools, working at a shelter, whatever it might be. But be a champion in our community in ways that they're already looking up to you when they come to our games and you're interacting with them at our camps, or they're seeing you, around. But so take it seriously, that being a champion in the community, and find a way to do that, because they have the privilege of playing the sport that they love in college, potentially on an athletic scholarship while earning their degree. So use that privilege and opportunity to, give to others. And then obviously then I talk about being a champion in sport. And I share with that's not just the national championships that we have. That's not just the SAC Excellence Cup that we've won. That is giving championship effort day in and day out, regardless of their role, regardless of what the next scouting report, or if they're starting or in the lineup, whatever it might be. And so I really try to prepare them through those three expectations for the full student athlete experience of valuing academics, valuing the opportunity to be involved in the community, campus community, greater community, the greater Charlotte area or our campus. And then again, that third piece about how they define themselves as a student athlete, I don't want it only tied to their output or contributions specific to games. It's that they show up with championship effort and are ultimately part of everything we achieve, regardless of where they are in the box score.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. And so the second one I have, going back to the hiring process that you were talking about previously, what unique qualities do you look for in first time leaders that have never been in this position but are looking to just open that door, aside from the general experience and education in terms of that?
I mean, so I some of the things I've already said, but I think the biggest thing is alignment with who we are and who they're going to be in their role. if they're working closely with coaches, with student athletes, with both, with the public, I want to be able to see them in that. And so it depends on how they show up in the interview. Can I see them interacting and engaging with our board of trustees if that's a role that I need from them? Or is it with, seeing their sport as an extension of the classroom? Can I see them learn, educating and helping our student athletes learn about their sport, learn about life lessons in like a coaching role or in a role that oversees like our student athlete development and enhancement? And so, it's making sure, if you're sitting in your seat, that you're portraying and showing up as someone that I can visualize doing that, whether it's because you're throwing out ideas or past experiences, great. But more so, I need to understand and see that this is how you're going to engage with people, and this is how you are present. This is how you show up.
Thank you so much.
Duncan, you're up, and Kylie.
All right. Hey, Kelley. My
Hello.
name is Duncan. I'm a graduate assistant strength coach for football here at Clemson. And question I had was, what was your first step in the process of how you said building upon at Wingate when you got there with a AD that had been there for many years, just coming in and, all right, the ball's still rolling. You just hop on. And like I said, you're just building upon what was there. For someone in my role, like in a couple of years, maybe being hired somewhere, and I have to start building upon a culture that's already there. What's the first step that you took and when you got there? Just, like you said, building upon it.
Yes. And so I had the opportunity to observe when I started in January of like things that we were already doing, because there's just not a lot that you're going to change and immediately, restart or do something entirely different when you're midstream in a semester in an academic year. You're midstream, about to start a semester. Winter sports are going, spring sports were, really down the road and kind of what they were going to do and some of the things there. So I really did have to focus on culture and impact that I could make that weren't necessarily operational. And actually in your area of strength and conditioning, one of the things I observed, we had 3 strength and conditioning coaches. I put forward in front of our CFO and we have it now up at 6. We doubled our strength and conditioning staff since I started. Again, intentionality around things I knew were going to impact the student athlete experience immediately impacted our staff, because you can imagine with only 3 before, a lot of sport coaches were filling in and trying to do things also, to assist that. So it was finding those, some people say low-hanging fruit, easy wins. None of them were easy. I still had to figure out, what was the case, the model, fiscally, things that made sense, and then get the right people into those positions as we grew that staff. And so I've been, it is really interesting following someone who, again, had been in this chair 20 years, because there's so much of the ways that we did things, but there's so much opportunity because I'm a new set of eyes, a different, bringing up at different institutions, educationally experiences. And so just to be able to take that and figure out where are some things that I can immediately tweak to say, this is going to impact our culture, because now in the strength and conditioning example, they have a better work-life balance, as do our sport coaches who were absorbing some of that. And so just looking to see, when I do these things, what is it saying about our department, me as a leader, and is it impacting in the areas that I want to? Yes, you can say, hey, we need to make sure that the visiting teams are using this locker room, whatever it might be, like those kind of things, great. And we still have to do those things, but what are we doing that then are speaking volumes about our culture too?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Actually, I thought one more thing I want to share on that. So we did something new this year, and this was a way that I instituted culture. So instead of having like a staff retreat, I held head coach advance and senior staff advance, because I want them looking forward. We're not retreating from anything, and we are talking about how are we going to advance going into the year. So I held those in August, and I also think, I had made sure everyone knew we were having those in May. In May we started talking about them. We had them in end of July and August, so that they knew these were coming and what those were going to look like. And again, it was just another culture setter that they like understand that that's the mindset that we're all in, is that we're calling, even just that we're calling these advances, but then what did they encompass? Obviously some fun, some games, some, opportunities for fellowship and being together and getting to know each other, but then also some, nuts and bolts and policies that we had to go over. And so that was a really big, I'll say, culture and a way that we set our expectations and standards for the year. We talked about their goal setting, and now when I've had one-on-ones, they've shared their goal setting, their goals, because I gave them, how they were going to kind of set those up and what we were going to do to talk about it. And so as we started the academic year, there was a lot of that culture that we'd been slowly doing through staff meetings, but hitting midstream of an academic year, this really let us start this academic year with a lot of those things being reemphasized or introduced for the first time.
All right, Kylie, you're up. I have a list of about 8 folks who have questions, so we're gonna kind of go into like quick fire.
Okay, I'll be shorter.
See how many we can get through in 18 minutes. All right, so we got Kylie, then Brock, then Elizabeth. And I'm gonna not talk until after Elizabeth's question.
Hi, I'm Kylie. I got my degree at Bethany in West Virginia, and one thing that happened at my time there was our head football coach had gotten fired, so they were looking for new candidates to fill that position. One of the coaches there was African American. He had been there for 10 plus years, and he actually was in the league, and he had an extensive resume. However, they hired a white man who happened to be friends with the president. So to me, that is an issue of DEI a little bit. So I was just wondering, what are things that colleges and boards who choose, who to hire, what are things they can do so things like that don't occur, and people who are more qualified or better fit that position actually have a chance, even though they are someone of color or a minority?
So there's a lot in that question. So, and rightfully so. And so I think I'll just answer big picture that I think, what's important to me, and I've hired 2 head coaches since I've been here. Tennis, our previous head coach left for a Division I opportunity, and then we started acrobatics and tumbling, and so that was a new hire of a new sport. And so, I think I know what I do is, I communicate with the board chair of the athletic subcommittee. I communicate with our president. I'm lucky everywhere I've been that they've given me as an AD the autonomy to hire who was the best fit. I've never been in a situation where they've overstepped and said, no, we're going this direction or whatnot. But all I can say is to try to avoid overreach by to your point of a board or a president. It's just educating them on, what are we looking for, maybe sharing, and in this example that specifically came down to race that you shared, maybe sharing the team makeup of, what you're looking at in the demographics of the team. How many of them are first time and they're first in their family to go to college? How many are Pell eligible? How many are international on some of our rosters? How many are, from this state or region, and then obviously racially, you can share that data. And so that hopefully leaders will see, that the value in having a perspective that can continue to recruit and guide and relate and mentor the student athletes. So I just really think communication is the most important thing. And when you're in a seat like mine, you would know what you might need to, let me get in front of this, or if maybe someone does have a bias, unconscious or conscious, and I need to get in front of that and help them with data and information and let that speak to them to come to their own conclusion with my advocating for where we are.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelley, I'm Brock. Just wanted to quickly ask, in all the sports that you have in the fall, establishing a winning culture for, let's say, the football team, like how does an athletic administration like at Wingate do that to make sure that they're, setting their goals and accomplishing them throughout the season?
So specific to the coaches, like you said, it is absolutely understanding what are the expectations and their goals and what's realistic also. It's interesting now with COVID years, and people are able to transfer when you think you might have had them because they can go do 2 years with a grad degree, and let alone injuries. There's so many uncontrollables that I want to be sure I understand that, and that more importantly, it's what is realistic and how do I support you to meet those goals and reach those goals. And so when I step into a place, and use football as the example, but our football head coach has been here over 20 years. It's like, hey, what can I do to support you? And what does this look like? And I'm coming and I'm dropping by team meetings and practices because I want to see what your culture is. And of course, if I have ideas or something that, really jumped out to me as really great or something we maybe need to talk about, we're going to have that conversation. And I've been fortunate that they all welcome it in any of those situations. Now, overall, for me to determine both our student athlete experience, but grasp fully the culture, I'm doing things like traveling with every team at least once. And like I said, I need to be on that bus, and I need to see like what are the things that they're experiencing, liking, and what am I hearing both from the student athletes and from the coaching staff for how we're approaching things. And a football example, how are we moving that many people at one time, to places and whatnot. But it's really the only way that I can evaluate the full student athlete experience, let alone our staff, and understand the culture that is established in so many of these programs. And then if we're setting a new culture, so field hockey, this is our first fall, our first year of the sport. Obviously it was established before I got here because she spent all last year recruiting. I went on their first road trip and understand like that culture is like, hey, they've got to get to know each other. They're great individually, but they've got to come together and they don't have an advantage that some teams have, that at least some of them have played together before, and so grasping and understanding that is just an important part of understanding all 24 sports. What are the different cultures and what are they doing? And you only learn that from being present.
Yeah, I feel like the fall season's always like the hardest time for an AD and athletics.
yeah.
It's just, it's crazy.
And first fall,
yeah.
that's the other thing too, my first fall. So, but it's great. It's great. Yeah.
Thank you though. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Hi, Kelly. My name is Elizabeth Jones. And my question would be, and this may be a little personal, I hope it's not, but how do you balance, because you mentioned you've made it to your mountaintop. How are you balancing personal and professional? Because as a mom, for me personally, wanting to have it all, and be present for my kids, but also be successful, professionally as well. So how have you balanced that through the years?
And I'm glad you asked this, and it is a personal question, and I will say I am much better at it now as a second time AD, and yes, I was interim AD at Winthrop, but I'm not counting that second time, full-time AD or non-interim, because the first time I had it all out of whack. I thought I needed to be at everything, and I think some of that also had to do with we had a very young staff and we had a lot less staff than I have here. And so what I have done, including when I started in January, is just been intentional that I'm not going to be at everything. And meaning every event, you can't for 24 sports. I'm going to be at the meetings I need to be in, let me be clear, and things like that. But I'm not going to be at every single sport, but I can promise you I'm going to be at multiple opportunities for home events. I'm going to be at senior days. I mark my calendar and I, protect my space of when I'm going to leave or come in, later, because last night we had volleyball. And I was not good at that the first time because I didn't feel that. I'm in a place now that I've decided that. I mean, not to mention I am actually getting married in June. So I'm also
congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm also in the middle of, thanks Jana too. I saw you cheering. I'm also in the middle of trying to plan a wedding, and, we're trying to find a house together and things too. But I am like, what, I have to have faith in our staff. They're going to call me if it's something that needs to be on my radar, and I don't care. Like, that's fine. I'm still in my space of spending time with my loved ones and people who are important to me. And then of course, you know, like my fiance, like he's gonna come to games. He already has, you know, like so there's also time like I still get to be around him while I'm working in a role of if I need to talk to a trustee or a fan at it, he knows he's going to step away, you know, so you just have to be open with those conversations that they understand what it's going to be like when you come to one of my work events. And I'm fortunate that Lamont gets that and, you know, gives me the space that I need. And then he'll go converse with whoever's, you know, standing nearby and not worry that I jumped around to 3 other people since then. But it takes time and learning and failure and then learning from that failure, because that was absolutely at Lake Erie. I spread myself too thin. And it impacted me for sure as a person, my relationships, everything. And so I had to be intentional about it going into this position, especially knowing that we had 24 sports, which is the most I've had at any institution as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Congrats. I recommend just getting married on your back porch in between Clemson's football game and Florida's football game. That's
Okay.
That's definitely the route to go. Okay.
That sounds like experience there, but no, I got to go be true to my home state. It's going to be in Florida on the beach.
Hey,
Sorry.
No, that sounds wonderful too. All right, let's go. And we're going to talk more about that question, Elizabeth. So especially when
It's
we get to
important.
the authentic leadership module, I think will really help you answer some of those questions. Alex, Dana, Hunter, we have 8 minutes.
Okay, I'll be shorter. Promise. Never happens. But let me
You're
see what I
doing
can do.
great. You're doing great.
No worries, no worries. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a member of the Clemson men's basketball team here. And my question is, when you're in the interviewing process, is there a specific leadership style that appeals more to you or you look for more than others?
So when I'm interviewing candidates,
Correct.
sure. So I want them to be collaborative, and especially understand that, you know, they're going to wear multiple hats. Like it's not going to be like, here's your job description and you're never going to do anything else. So I need them I know that they're adaptive. And then, you know, I think overall that, you know, the leadership styles that I want them, you know, just to be learning and I said it about myself, but I think participative. Yeah, I want to know that they're not going to be a yes person for me, that they're going to throw out ideas and talk through things and know that it's not always my way. We're all learning and growing and doing this.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dana. So my question relates to like battling enrollment and like D2, D3 level. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, 15 minutes away from Penn State, but I also had a big state school that was really close to me where they had D2 and D1 institutions, but I attended all 3 levels and they're all declining minus Penn State's main campus. So like, how do you battle that when schools, obviously sports drive people in, but how do you kind of help give that morale? Because I know at the first college I went to, I didn't go to a single sporting event besides for a lacrosse game, and their other teams weren't that good. So how do you kind of bring that in? Because I missed that when I was there.
So I'm going to answer this from the perspective, how do I contribute to the enrollment strategy of the institution? Am I on the right track there?
Yeah.
Okay, so 100% part of every conversation that we have about enrollment for the institution, we actually have a new programs group that meets specific to Wingate that talks academic programs, you know, marching band, and then athletic programs that we're adding. And so that was one of the drives to Wingate, was that they are so innovative and forward thinking and growing in that space of what can we do and what can we offer to make sure we're not in a situation that enrollment is down and, you know, we're having to make some tough decisions. And so that was a draw to this institution, because there are a lot, to your point, of smaller institutions that are having to make some tough decisions when these final numbers are coming in right now from, you know, census day in your classes. And so I want athletics to be a partner in that space, in the fact that, you know, yes, we have, how many can we carry on this team, that the student athlete experience is still something that I can be proud of and that we can afford, and also retain students and you keep, winning, whatever it is that the other values are in that program. And so I want to be around that table institutionally to make sure that they know the athletics is part of it. And our retention rate, knock on wood, is higher than that of the campus because student athletes are bought in and connected to their program, their coaches, their teammates, administrators, and they have that built-in support system. So all I can do is, make sure that if there's an idea that I want to throw out there that where we can help in that within athletics, or how can we host visit days around athletic events so that, to your point of, they come on campus and they see all the great things that we have going on, and the free shirts and the pizza and whatever it is that we're throwing out at our games, and how fun it is. Our gym was packed last night for volleyball. It wasn't a visit day, but had it been, a student would have been on campus and been like, this is amazing, this is awesome. So use athletics in that way. We're the front porch in so many ways, but a lot of that is campus events too. And so what can we do, whether it's me throwing out the idea or someone asking, let's try it, let's do it, and see if it can ultimately benefit the institution.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Kelly. My name's Hunter Tyson, and I also play basketball here. I just want to start by saying welcome to Wingate, because I grew up 10 minutes from there.
Okay.
And my dad graduated in 2001, played basketball there, and then went back and got another degree. But
is his last name Tyson as well?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. I'll see. I'll talk to our coaches after this.
Yeah, I grew up going to all the basketball camps and everything.
Oh, great. What a small world. Awesome.
Yeah, but my question is, obviously the leader of the athletic department, you have to, make some tough decisions and can't keep everybody happy. So I would just ask, how do you kind of go about navigating which sport gets which money? And obviously people might be upset, but how do you go about that?
Okay, so the easy thing for Wingate is for this fiscal year, we just kept the same budget as last year because we have a new CFO, and so that was easy. Now I am analyzing everything, and at previous institutions, you do have to think about the student athlete experience, but you also have this thing called net tuition revenue that you want to be sure that in our partial athletic scholarship model, that the programs are generating what the institution needs overall from athletics and net tuition revenue. And not to mention, you talk auxiliary like housing and meals. And I'm taking a deep dive here real quickly, Jana, but I'm hoping it's something that you all are going to talk later about so this is just surface level. So, but it sounds like you're going to talk about it later. And so you have to balance it and figure out the budget overall. And again, I haven't done that specifically for Wingate yet because we just kind of copied and pasted the budget from last year. But now, especially as league dynamics are switching, road trips are switching, what do we need to do with that? It does take analysis and decision, and you're not going to make everyone happy. You can't. You have to be okay with that as a leader and trust and earn their trust that you are making the decisions that are best for the institution. And they're going to have some that you're going to be able to meet them where they are, and you're going to have some where you can't meet them where they are. But hopefully you can end up in the middle and show data and reasoning and priorities that are set by yourself or the institution or for the department to guide those decisions.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hunter, great one to bring us home. For those of you that did not get your question, and I'm sorry, raise your hand sooner, please, next time. Kelley, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. This is a wealth of information. No surprise there. And I knew you're a rock star, so that's why I asked you specifically to kick us off.
Thank you.
So, congrats.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, congrats on the wedding. We'll need to get you guys down here for a lake weekend sometime.
Oh yes, yeah, we would love that for sure. Thank you, and I wish all of you all a great fall, and be on the lookout for that internship that we'll probably post in April or May. It's going to specifically be around athletic enhancement and special events, so it'll give you fundraising experience, athletic enhancement, and student athlete development. And again, it's fully funded by the NCAA, and we're so fortunate.
Guys, the D2 experience is so special. You get your foot in the door at D2, you're getting your hands in a lot of cookie jars. It's just going to set you up for success down the road. So definitely take advantage of that if you're interested. Everyone, have a great day. Go Tigers, go Bulldogs, right?
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
I was like, I hope that's right. Okay, good deal. All right, everybody, enjoy your day. Thanks for being here.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye.